All right, guys, brief disclaimer before we get started here. Yes, there's a reason there's been so many days between my last post and this one. I was working on the boat, and the boat fought me every step of the way. I had to come up with some creative solutions to make everything work and fit and do what it's supposed to do, which will be seen in this video. And then I wanted to put the new video out on Saturday, but Saturday we had at our local track a double header. We ran off-road starting at like, supposed to start at 10 o'clock in the morning, but we had low numbers and we were waiting on people, so it was almost noon. But I was at the track starting at a little after 8 o'clock in the morning, and didn't get home till like 1:30 a.m. And then Sunday, I felt terrible. Was exhausted, and I felt a little bit sick when Saturday started. I'm much better now on Monday, and the boat's fixed. Spoiler alert, boat's fixed. But you'll get to see how it went from gutted to fixed, or from running on factory electronics to running on something else in this video. But thank you for being patient with me, and I will do my best not to leave you hanging for 5 days again in the future. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Hey, welcome back to RC Restomod. Today we're going to talk about what we're going to do with our boat now that it's been in the water. We'll start out by doing the things it recommends doing every time it's been in the water. The first thing we're supposed to do is go to the back, and we'll need to remove the drain plug here. That was pretty easy. And let's see how much water comes out of it. Actually, that's pretty impressive. That's all the water that I poured out a little water, but let me show you what's going on. This little water jacket is not sealed up against the motor tight, and so any water that should have been coming through to cool the motor was actually getting dumped inside the hull, and I had to dump that water out. Other than that, it was watertight, guys. There's a lot of things I'm less than impressed with on this boat, but a few things are good, and it's very watertight. All right, now we're going to turn it around here, and we're going to take the propeller off. Okay, so we take off the propeller, and I believe I'm going to have to loosen this grub screw right here, which looks like a 1.5. And it is. So the grub screws out. Now this shaft should pull out at this point. And it does. And we're supposed to clean that up and put fresh grease on it and then stick it back in there. Now I'll clean it up, but I'm not gonna stick it back in yet because I want to pull this motor out and start sizing it up for a replacement. Pull the battery out, get it out of the way. I got to figure out how that's attached. I think it may just be double-sided taped in. And it looks like 2 screws is what holds the motor in place. Let's pull those out. All right, I'm gonna have to set it in my lap. I can't get enough downward pressure to remove the screw with it on the stand. I don't want to break the stand. That's the coupler that goes on our drive shaft that turns the propeller. And here comes the motor. Now we can unplug that. And we'll unplug the that looks like a plug. Yeah, it is a plug. It's just really tight and a little bit greasy. Okay. Slide the waterproofing out of the way. Now that's unplugged. Motor's out on that side. All right, the motor is out. All right, now that we have the motor out, let's see, yep, 2 more Phillips screws, tie that there. Probably be helpful to get the coupler out of the way. Okay, that's got that off. Now we can come in here and get the motor mount off. Okay, there's the motor mount. I can see why it leaked, and it never stood a chance. It absolutely never stood a chance to seal, because it's going to be hard to get you where you can see. But there's a place for water to come in here, and then it goes all the way around. There's channels that go all the way around this dang motor, and that has a split in it. Every time it gets to right there, water's going to come out either end. That's very poor engineering. So that little sleeve right there is our problem, but the motor has holes in it, so they can't go back and they couldn't just put it straight onto the motor. Huh. Well, knowing that now, that's going to give me an opportunity. Now, so that split, I don't think there's anywhere. It would have to be oriented just right, but then that's kind of poor. But when it goes back together, we'll make it fit the motor better somehow. If it doesn't fit our motor tightly, what we'll do is wrap it in some foil tape that'll work better than this. And then once we get it set where we want it and everything's lined up, we'll pull it back out and we'll put this is very low pressure, but we'll put a little bead of silicone around the edges of it to get a good seal. But anyway, this cheesy little motor is going to get replaced with something brushless and a lot more powerful. Now let's see if we can get the ESC out. Okay. That was easy. Was just taped in with double-sided tape. Looks like they wrapped it in heat shrink. So I'm going to need to cut that off so that we can get it open and unplug our servo and leave it there. Oh, and the little sensor that makes it work only when it's in the water. There's two wires that come over here, and they run to screws that go through the hull. So I think the idea is that the water will cause continuity between the two screws. And water got up inside this, I think because, well, it's because of this system. No water got in here due to the boat leaking. It got in here because of the cooling system being messed up. All right, when you look at this, there are 5 wires going to this servo, and they are super attached to that circuit board. So our ESC is just a it's probably the same guts I see inside my other ESCs, but still, it's pretty lame. And that servo having that many wires is pretty lame, because that means it won't plug into a standard receiver, which means we're going to need a new servo as well. But these little micro servos are pretty cheap, so we'll get that out. Alright, that's the servo out, and that is a cheesy servo. But we'll build back better. I still have to remove these 2 little screws here. Okay, that's all the electronics out. We will glue the rudder back together, and I'm going to take some measurements on this little motor. And once I have the measurements to know for sure about the can size and the shaft size, because I really don't want to have to go hunt a little coupler that will work on anything else. So I'll go do some computer research, get some parts ordered, and when they show up, we'll do part 2 of putting this thing back together. Okay, here's all the factory electronics that came out of the car. Or the boat. It's not a car, it's a boat. So let's go in here. First we'll compare the motors. You can see that the diameter is the same, but the brushed motor was a little longer, but has a much smaller shaft on it. Now, according to the information I got off the internet when I ordered it, this should be 1/8 of an inch, which is surprising given that it comes from a place where they don't use imperial measurements. The servo this little doohickey right here. It doesn't stick up as much as this one, and you know, the little wings are significantly thinner on this one, and I think when we make the modifications to this one, it would be wise to scoot it this way as much as possible. And it looks like the I don't think this servo horn's going to be usable on this servo. We'll have to play with that. I'll check that in a little bit. But this is the ESC/receiver combination. Another problem, the reason I replaced the servo is this is a 5-wire servo, and the receiver I'm going to put in this is a Fly Sky, and it is only set up for 3-wire. So we're going to have to use the, I needed a 3-wire servo, so I got these. Anyway, that's the challenge we're up against. Let's see if we can make it happen. All right, guys, we're all set up to drill it out. I've got the little coupling held in some vice grips. It's a lot safer than trying to hold it with my fingers. We're going to put a little bit of gun oil on here to lubricate everything. And we have a 1/8 inch drill bit. Wish me well. Okay, we have enlarged the hole in our coupling. Now for the part that really matters. That is a good fit. All right, that makes me super happy. So we have our motor drilled out well enough to fit. Now the next thing I'm going to have to do is get my Dremel tool out with the grinder wheel on it so that we can make these wings a little smaller. And I want it to go this way. There is a casting line. Yeah. The inside, I don't know, you probably can't see it, but these little wings are hollow down to a point, and I've just got to cut off that top layer. So let's get the Dremel out and see what we can do about that. Okay guys, we got 2 screws that are cut off. Now we've got to get this put down. Oh, we've got to get this put over my motor. And actually, we've got these little screw holes back here. And okay, we've got another tiny little issue I've just run into. And that is that my screws won't go through the holes in the motor mount. So we're going to drill them out slightly. That's a piece of cake, and it'll only take a second. Okay. Now let's check and see. Nice tight fit. Guys, if you need to drill a hole for 3mm screws, 7/64 is a really good size. That's what I just used, and it is a perfect fit. Okay. Oh no. Well, that looked like it lined up, but it does not. Let's see, these are these are 20mm apart. And the holes here are looks like 15mm apart. So when I take them out to 20 millimeters, that's not going to be a full hole. But I think we'll be all right. I think I can just slot those out. I don't know if you can see the difference there. It's 5 millimeters, so I'm going to have to bring these out 2.5. Then I'll center it up and put a washer on the outside to make sure it bites good and doesn't slide around. And based on the fact that we're going to have a drive shaft that comes up through here that's direct coupled to it, I don't think walking around is going to be a big deal. We're not going to have to establish a gear mesh. So I think it'll be just fine. I just need to take this out 2.5 millimeters on either side. Now we're about halfway there. I'm gonna put you guys on pause while I finish getting us there. Okay. I didn't let you see how ugly my holes got before I got them milled out to the right size, but there they are. They are, the motor looks to be centered up really well in that little horseshoe. The screws are in there nice. And once I'm assured that everything's gonna line up well, we'll go back and put a little Loctite on those things. Then that's how that sits in there. Let's put our, so we'll turn the flat on the motor straight up. Slide our coupling in. And we need to leave that loose to adjust it. And my drive shaft fell out on the floor. We're gonna have to go get that. Okay, we're ready to put this back on. Now the way this is waterproofed is by grease along the shaft. And looks like next time I'm out and about, I have to buy some more grease, because this tube is Dunsky. All right. There you go, it's peeking through there. Let me go get a paper towel to clean my fingers and we'll come back and put the inside part together. All right, now. There's a flat spot machined into that shaft, and that's where this gets tightened down. All right, that fits there. Now I'm going to pull these screws out and put a little Loctite on them and put them right back in so that they don't fall out on us. fit there. Those two fit together well. Now we need to put those back in. Okay, now let's see if this little servo horn will work on our new servo. Alright, does that fit the new servo? No, it does not. Luckily, the new servos did come with some little servo horns and such. Let's see if we can make one of those work. There is one that's one-sided. I think it's going to be pretty much perfect for what we're after here. See if we can tell where the old one was connected. Let's look for witness marks. Looks like it was in the second one from the outside, which would line up with the third one from the outside. We're going to go to the second one from the outside. That ought to give the servo a little bit of a quicker stroke. Make the boat slightly more responsive. But that looks like it ought to work. So, the servo straps down with this little piece here. That rolls pretty smooth. Now there's one other area of concern, and that is, will the canopy fit over the new motor? Well, yes it will. Dudes, things are going super good here. I am going to stop this for a minute, and I'm going to go get some double-sided tape. All right, I'm back with some chemicals. Set this out of the way because it is definitely in the way. The first chemical we're going to use is some Gorilla Glue. It's traditional Gorilla Glue, but the Gorilla Super Glue. I'm going to set the Dremel off to one side because I do think we're done with it. I think we're through with all the custom stuff. I think we're down to just putting her together at this point. And this is a mistake on my part. In my pickup, it fell over in the seat and broke the rudder. Luckily, it broke really jagged, So I think if we get some super glue on there and stick it together, that it'll hold pretty well. So let's test that theory. Okay, I want to set that where it'll be safe, and we'll let the glue cure and do its thing over here out of the way. Next up, we're going to need the factory ESC, because there are 2 holes in the hull of the boat that I had forgotten about, where these 2 screws went through to form their supposed sensor to tell you when it was in the water. It looks like there's some kind of glue on it. That could explain why they were so difficult to unscrew. Now there's that. Now we're not going to need these because I'm not going to try to duplicate that functionality, which I don't believe was functional in the first place. But these 2 little holes right here come out the bottom of the boat over here. So we're gonna take some steps to try and make sure that that stays watertight. So I'm going to take some of this glue that glued itself shut. There we go. I'm going to dip the screw in the glue. The way that glue kind of stays in place, it's almost like the texture, it's almost like silicone when it sets up. So we're going to put a little dab on each of these screws where they come out the bottom, and we'll just let that set up. And I believe that that glue being on top and bottom will make that watertight. Now we got that together. Let's flip it over. We'll start installing some electronics. I normally prefer to glue in my ESCs and servos and such because it's so much more secure, but I was afraid that if I ever have to remove them, that prying against this hull might cause a crack and therefore make it not watertight. So I went and got some double-sided tape. One of the problems we have now is that I have a Dean's connection on this ESC, and the battery that came out has a backwards TEMU connection on it. So I think what I'm going to do is change my battery over to the female half of the Deans. I know a lot of people hate Deans because they can melt together with high amperage, but this is a 35 amp ESC, and the wires coming into it are tiny. I don't think that the heat problem will be in the connection. I just don't anticipate trouble at that low an amperage. So let me shut down. You've seen me solder before. I will do that, and we'll cut another little piece of the double-sided tape and probably mount our power switch. I don't know, I'll find somewhere to put it. It's getting a bit crowded in here, as it always seems to. But I'll find a place to put that, and then we'll solder the Deans on the battery, plug everything in and tuck the wires away, and I'll show you what I came up with that in just a little bit. Okay guys, I failed to get a seal with the water jacket onto the new motor. So obviously the motor's going to have to come out. We're going to have to make some changes. I thought that I would use this foil tape to wrap around the motor and make it thick enough that that rubber water jacket would get a good seal, which I thought, brilliant. And then it dawned on me that I don't know if foil tape is conductive through itself or not. If it's not, then it would be the same as wrapping the motor in a blanket, which would be worse than just leaving it with no water jacket at all. So we're going to have to do a little bit of science. I think that this is just a foil with some adhesive on the back, but I don't know that for sure. So what we're going to do, I originally thought about shooting it with my heat gun, but then it dawned on me that heat guns use radiant heat, which is heat traveling through the atmosphere, and shiny stuff repels radiant heat. So that's not going to work very well. So what I'm going to do is put some heat here, and we're going to see how far out it travels on the tape. And the heat is conducting out on the tape quite a bit. All right, 75 degrees, it's 82 degrees there. This heat gun's not working. It says it's 81 degrees, but it burnt my freaking fingers. All right, the heat is traveling out along the surface, so it is conductive. All right. Now that we know that, we need to get this out of the way. We're going to need to remove the motor. That's how easy it is to remove the motor, but the problem is, well, it looks like I twisted, looks like I may have twisted this on the little adapter that they put on the factory motor. Yeah, I did. That was, it's my fault, but luckily I found it before we stuck it in the water. So first things first, we need to get this off. Okay, we're gonna need to find out how big that is. Okay. That is 28.8 millimeters, 28.9 millimeters. And new motor is 27.9. So to get back to the factory thickness, we only need to add 1 millimeter. We're going to add a little bit more than that, hoping that it'll press the rubber on there a little tighter and get a better seal. So okay, now we do have some wrinkles in it, and we don't want those. So we need to find some, I bet that Sharpie will do it. We'll just kind of rub back and forth on it until they go away. Okay, let's see what diameter we've got now. 28.5, still slightly smaller. So we'll cut another foot of the tape off. Okay, let's check that diameter. 29.1. We are actually thicker now. And since we don't have the split anymore, it shouldn't really matter how our water jacket is oriented. Now the next thing we're going to try to help get a little bit better seal is we're going to dope it up with some white lithium grease. Bought a new package. So I'm going to just smear that grease all around. There's quite a bit that's built up on this edge, and I'm going to wipe it off with my finger, and then I'm going to apply it to this edge. And we'll wipe up some of the excess, but hopefully putting a little waterproof, because grease is a pretty solid waterproofing deal, and it might make it to where water would have to have more pressure to come past it. Okay, now we'll wipe off the excess. Let's see what we got. I want to give it a little mouth test here. Guys, we got a seal. That worked. That worked. So now I just got to put it back together. All right. One of the last things we've got to do custom fab wise is we've got an issue in that the battery, come on out battery, the battery has this TEMU plug on it, and our new ESC came with the Dean's plug on it. Well, originally I thought about putting the Dean's on the battery because I thought maybe the Dean's was a little superior, but it dawned on me I've already modified a charger to work with this. So I think what I'm going to do is snip these off, and we're going to solder this end on right here and see if we can't get our boat up and running. So I'm going to cut you guys off for a minute while I do the soldering, and then I'll be back in just a second. All right, yes, the voltage was pretty low on that battery, so I've got it charging, and while I'm charging it, I think we can go ahead and put the rudder back on. So let's see if we can get it installed. I'm not going to tighten it up the set screw on it yet because I need everything to come on to get the servo centered and make sure I've got it right, make sure I don't have to pull it out and move the servo horn over a tooth or something like that. There it goes. Okay. All right, that's got that pin fully pushed back through. Now, when we cycle the servo, it turns the rudder just like it's supposed to. The super glue seems to have really done the trick to hold it in place. Now we put that hose on there. And then hopefully, when that battery's charged, we'll hook it up and we'll be able to see the propeller turn back here, and the mechanical portion of the boat's makeover will be completely done. And then we'll have to see how it runs. But we're still, this is still very bargain friendly, starting with a $110 boat, and now TEMU's offering me some money back. I don't know what's going on. Haven't really figured out those people yet. My wife has dealt with them before. She'll guide me through the pitfalls and perils that come with dealing with TEMU, but hopefully we'll, I may have to buy something else to claim that discount that I'm getting back on this one or something. I don't know. We'll see. I do have a little crawler in my cart right now. It looked like a hell of a deal. But right now we're just waiting on the battery charge, and then we'll try to bind the transmitter to the receiver and see what happens. So let's just wait on the battery. All right, guys, I had an existential crisis on my hands. It started at the racetrack on Saturday night when I was getting ready for the Mud Boss final, or the Mud Boss main, and my Mud Boss is still on the old GT5 Fly Sky controller, which I'm probably going to hear all sorts of comments about how that needs to be upgraded and how my cheap self needs to go ahead and purchase some receivers for my NB4, which is, it's a better transmitter than the old Fly Sky GT5, but I've got a bag. I've got like a dozen of these receivers. So while I do need to get my race car on the heavy duty controller, I want to keep my bashers and boats and stuff like that on this GT5 as long as I can. But I don't know how long that's going to be because, like I say, I was heading up to do the Mud Boss race, and for some reason or another, all the programming in my transmitter was gone. I mean, like, just not there anymore. And anyway, we were able to rebind it, and then I got home and I was trying to bind the boat to the to this transmitter, and it wouldn't do it. And then I tried to bind my the little phaser that we built recently, the little Subaru, or not Subaru, little Toyota Supra, and it wouldn't bind. And it was getting really frustrating. And then I dug through my stuff and pulled out another bind plug, and all of a sudden it works. So I had a bad bind plug that was driving me out of my skull. Now I've got the electronics hooked up, and the first thing I figured out is that the servo has to come back out, because the servo horn needs to stick straight up and down when the servo is zeroed, and it doesn't. It sticks straight out the back. So if you look at what the steering does, obviously that's not going to make the boat turn, and we're going to get some really cool donuts if I hit it like that. So give me just a moment and I'll fix that. Okay. Step one. Let's get this. Let's turn it off. Then we'll pull the servo out. I usually try to make sure that I do power up a servo and zero it before I put a servo horn on it, but got a little ahead of myself because I was in a hurry to get this thing done. And so I did something dumb, and it bit me in the butt, and that's the story of my life. All right, I'm going to stick on one side of the servo, so I'm going to get out. First, I want to try to make sure that I'm in servo L, and then I want to remove the servo horn and point it outside it has the sticker on it. In case you're wondering, yes, this was a pain in the butt to get on, so I fully anticipated it being a pain in the butt to get off. I'm glad that the camera is facing the table, because I was having to hold my mouth right to get this back on, and that was probably a very unflattering look for my face. Okay, that is centered up. So what we want to do now is poke this through. Oh, this is tricky too. In case you're wondering, none of this boat project has been particularly easy. All right, I got that lined up where it should feed. Yeah, it should feed through the center. Now what we really want to have happen with the servo centered, we want the all right, the rudder is not centered, but it's right about there is centered, so we may have to adjust the trim a little bit. That's well within trim adjustment. I think it'll still steer just fine. So let's pluck out that little screw that fell down in there, like that. We'll put the little strap back on. There we go. Now let's check the functionality on everything. I'll flip it upside down so that you can see everything move. So let's actually, I think I've got quite a bit more. I think that cheesy little servo has got more power than the old one, because it sure is Sure is moving that quickly. Now let's see if the propeller turns. Oh, look at that. This is gonna run good, guys. I'm excited to take it out. We've got one more little modification that's gonna be all aesthetics. And I think I have solved all the challenges this thing has thrown at me. We've got the water jacket sealed up so that hopefully water will flow around the motor and out to cool it down so that we can run longer than this tiny little battery would let us run otherwise. Let's see, how am I going to poke this wire down in there? Really don't want it getting in the servo. So probably what I need to do is make myself a little note to put the battery in this way, and then we'll just tuck the wires down on this side of the boat. I think that the sides of a catamaran are called sponsons. Is that correct? Let me know in the comments if that's right or not. But if we put the battery in with the wires facing this way, it'll stay out of all the wires will stay out of all the mechanical stuff. And then we'll take the antenna and run it up into the front of the boat that way. I've had really good luck with range on these receivers, with them being inside a car. Now this is thicker plastic. I may run into a problem there. If so, we'll adjust. But as of right now, it closes up on the new electronics. Okay, now the boat has all new electronics with a more powerful motor, a more powerful servo, should be a more efficient motor that gives us longer run time with the same battery. And I have one more little modification that I'm going to make to it that won't change the way it runs, but it'll make it slightly more awesome. And then we'll go out and test it. And when I do, you will see that on RC Restomod. Thanks, guys.